The deaths of at least 23 sub-Saharan migrants attempting to cross from Morocco to the Spanish enclave of Melilla are the worst of their kind, casting doubt on southern Europe's immigration controls and its relationship with North Africa. Melilla is located in Spanish territory, but on the North African coast, about 150 kilometers, 90 miles, from the Spanish mainland. It and its sister city, Ceuta, are Africa's and Europe's only land borders. On June 24, 2022, between 1,500 and 2,000 migrants who had been camping in the Moroccan mountains surrounding Melilla descended on the city's border, some carrying sticks, hoping to scale the border fences and thus enter Spanish territory. After cutting an opening with shears, more than 500 people were able to sneak into a border control area. Many of them were crushed between the 6-metre-high fences and Moroccan border guards, who used tear gas and batons on the migrants in the chaos that followed. While Moroccan authorities said that 23 migrants and 2 police officers were killed, local NGOs have reported a higher migrant death toll of 37. Dozens more were injured, with many reported to be in Moroccan hospitals. Spanish officials reported that 49 Guardia Civil officers sustained mild injuries, while Morocco reported 140 of its security forces were injured. A total of 133 migrants managed to reach Melilla, where they are being housed in the city's migrant temporary stay center while their legal status is examined. Several dozen migrants could be seen packed together on the ground near the border, with bodies piled on top of each other and bloodstains and articles of clothing nearby. Many of the migrants appeared injured, while many others showed no signs of movement. As Moroccan forces in riot gear watched over them in the aftermath of the crossing, they were left there without help for hours, which increased the number of deaths. One Moroccan security officer even appeared to use a baton to lash out at one person who was lying prone. In the days before, police had carried out several raids on the camps where the migrants and refugees slept rough as they waited for the chance to cross into Spain. The police confiscated food and any cash they could find, leaving migrants anxious and exhausted as they grappled with higher levels of precariousness. During the stampede, Moroccan forces threw stones and launched tear gas directly at those attempting to cross. Normally they throw it in the air, but this time it was aimed directly at the migrants. The migrants were so weak that they fell at the slightest touch. Some possibly died because they were weak and hungry. This is the worst such tragedy in the history of Spain's 2 North African enclaves. The most recent comparable incident occurred in 2014, when 15 migrants died while attempting to swim across the border fence to Ceuta. A judicial investigation into Spanish civil guards who allegedly fired rubber bullets and tear gas into a nearby body of water was eventually dropped. This time, the deaths occurred against the backdrop of a contentious shift in Spanish-Moroccan relations, which is thought to have influenced border controls. The improved bilateral relations with Morocco are directly related to that country's border policing style. After decades of neutrality, the Spanish government of Socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez changed its stance on the long-running dispute over Western Sahara in March 2022, favoring Morocco's claims to the territory slightly larger than the United Kingdom. Morocco's capital, Rabat, had been pressuring Madrid to change its Western Sahara policy, and the arrival of over 10,000 migrants in Ceuta in May 2021, with Moroccan border guards apparently doing nothing to stop them, was seen as part of that effort. Mr. Sánchez hoped that by siding with Morocco on the disputed territory, he could ensure the North African country's cooperation on migration, preventing a repeat of last year's Ceuta incident. However, Spain's pivot on Western Sahara has enraged Algeria, which supports self-determination for the territory, and critics say it has encouraged Morocco to over-police the border. In the immediate aftermath of the tragedy, Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez focused on the migrants, calling it a violent attack which puts in doubt their territorial integrity. He placed the blame on human traffickers for the deaths and expressed his never-ending support for the civil guard and the police. He further thanked the Moroccan police for their work. Clearly, the migration issue should not be used for political ends. Spain must think again about a policy of externalizing its borders and blackmailing on the part of Morocco that creates so much violence and suffering. These migrants are not invaders, they are just human beings who are seeking to reach Europe, fleeing wars and drought aggravated by the consequences of the war in Ukraine, lack of water and infestations caused by climate change. Asylum seekers fleeing armed conflict in Sudan were among those attempting to cross, and that the indiscriminate use of violence to manage migration and control borders had prevented people who were eligible for international protection from reaching Spanish soil. When the dead are blonde and have blue eyes, everyone sees things more clearly. The 24th of June 2022 now ranks as the deadliest day in recent memory along the section of the EU's only land border with Africa. The African Union Commission, together with human rights campaigners in Spain and Morocco, has called for investigations to be launched in both countries after this tragedy. All countries have an obligation under international law to treat all migrants with dignity and to prioritize their safety and human rights, while refraining from the use of excessive force. Thanks for watching. If you like this type of content, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more stories.